Leah. Welcome to the How to Write a Book podcast. Leah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, us too. I cannot wait to tell my listeners about your journey, about your book. Oh my gosh, so I'm excited. We're so excited. So let me just go ahead and dive into a little bit about you, Leah, and then I'll have you take over from there. So, Leah.
Yeah.
Awesome, perfect. Leah is on a mission to empower and educate girls on how to be beautiful from the inside out through discovery of social, mental, and physical components. After graduating from John Carroll University with her Bachelor of Arts in Exercise Science and Entrepreneurship in 2017, she founded Empowered and Poised LLC, and she's currently working towards her Master's of Science in Social Administration with a focus of school social work at Case Western Reserve University, and slated to publish your very first book, Conscious Empowerment, a guide to helping girls build self-esteem and confidence, which is going to be published in 2021.
Woohoo!
Woo!
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I mean, just reading that and you're like, go girl. Yes, yes, yes. That is amazing. I mean, in reading your background, reading your organization, it is so beautiful, to touch base with someone who wants to empower girls, who's striving to do that. And you are doing it. Your LLC, Empowered and Poised, is doing just that. And before we dive more into like your book and your organization, your background includes anxiety and body image issues, as well as 10 years of working with youth. So do tell us, what did I miss here in your background? Tell us, how did you get here?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's hard to say that there's really one thing that led me here, because quite frankly, this is not where I thought I would be if you would have asked me, 5-10 years ago. But I think everything has its way of working out, right? Like I taught phys ed for 4 years and I never thought I would be in the field of education, right? I started a business never thinking I was going to be a business owner. I went to grad school never thinking I would be in grad school. And here I am writing a book, never having thought I was going to write a book. So, I think it's just it's been very serendipitous, and I'm really grateful that I've been provided with so many opportunities, and it was kind of like, when somebody knocks at your door, you open it up and you walk in. It was kind of like that with me, certain opportunities, would just kind of come about, obviously, not just on their own, but with hard work, connecting with people, being serious about my education, all of those types of things. But when these opportunities arose, like this wonderful opportunity to talk to you, I really had to step in my own courage and share my story and share my passions. And I think that's a lot of what has led me to where I am today.
That is amazing. And especially because you're talking about being brave, stepping into things that kind of jump out in front of you. And that is something that we talk about on the podcast, which is, believing in a message. And even if you don't know where it's going to go, the opportunities will rise. And that's exactly what you're doing here. I mean, you've created
Absolutely.
this beautiful LLC, right? And you're talking with these people, just touching briefly on the interviews that you have included in your book. I mean, that is just so inspiring.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm going to say this again and again. Thank you because you're showing up. You're have this calling, and that's something that we always try to do within the How to Write a Book podcast, is say, like, it can be scary, but show up.
Sure.
Up.
It
Right.
can be scary. It definitely can. I will not deny that. And I think that's where that courage comes into play, right? Is like having the courage that even when it's scary, to still give it a try, right? And to realize that if you fall down, you can get back up and keep going.
Oh my gosh, yes. And that is actually so timely, because we just released an episode on, what if you get rejected, or what if it just doesn't work out? And it's like, you're going to keep trying and moving forward. And that's
Absolutely.
right. Absolutely. I totally agree. Now, before we dive more into your book and your book writing process, I would love to talk about, your organization. So tell us a little bit about Empowered and Poised. I mean, this sounds like just such a game changer for teaching girls how to believe in themselves. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I would love to. If there's any specific questions that you have for me about it, let me know. I know that you definitely hit on the mission, which is to empower and educate girls on how to be beautiful from the inside out. So we're looking at the whole person. So helping young girls to develop socially, mentally, physically, right? Becoming a well-rounded individual, teaching those skills to ultimately help a young girl to be confident in her own abilities. And we do this through a variety of different programming and just different platforms that we have. So for example, individuals of any age can share their story on our blog, which shares about what makes an individual an empowered and poised in his or her own right. And so we have been really fortunate that we've built a community where over 150 individuals have shared their stories about all of the amazing things that they're doing and the challenges and obstacles that they've overcome. So we're so grateful for everybody who's contributed to that. And then in our programming, we've done after school programs, one-time workshops, partnered with different school districts, basically to help young girls, as we had mentioned before, become more confident in themselves and their abilities. And we do that through a lot of different hands-on activities. You know, a lot of people don't like to be talked at. Even as adults, we don't like to be talked at, right? So we like to find a way to engage our students when we're working with them to spread the word. And now there's this book, right? Which is to help the parents and educators and mental health professionals who are working with young girls to look at the different principles of how we can help a young girl, but keeping in mind that a one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't work when we're empowering young women, that we have to think about and look at their unique background and where they come from, their race, their culture, their socioeconomic status, experiences they've had in the past. So we're really excited and empowered and poised to just continue to spread the word about all of this that we're doing and to continue to promote positivity for young women.
Oh, that is awesome. Oh my gosh. Literally just talking with you, and I feel like that's blossom of hope because, I mean, a program like this, I know that it's a game changer. I'm almost like, oh, I wish I was like, just 10 years ago, let's do it. I love it. But still, I mean, we'll dive in now as well. But it is so awesome how you're showing up. And I would love to kind of talk a little bit about, you're talking about this one size fits all approach that we have for girls right now. Can you tell us more? What is that? Because when I read that, I was like, what is this approach? I would like help in recognizing what this one size fits all is.
Yeah, so I think that it's just, when I was doing reading and research, it feels like sometimes people say like, okay, if you, say this to your daughter or to the girl that you're working with, or if you do this or you do that, then automatically she's just going to become confident. But it's like, you can't just do that for everybody, right? I mean, affirmations might work for one girl, but for another girl, it's going to be the importance of giving her opportunities and experiences. Granted, I would argue that really it's both of those things, right?
Yeah.
But when you are talking to a young girl and you're affirming her, it needs to be specific to who she is, not just general, not something that she's not going to believe about herself, right? Because just these blanket statements, unfortunately, the research says that, they're not working the way that we think that they are, that they need to believe that in themselves too, that is something that they can do. And so, finding different role models who look like the girls that they're trying to empower and continuing to expand representation within media and, the different people who are helping our young women. So again, it's just that idea that, when you're working with a young girl, you need to really think about who she is as an individual and how you can help her based on what her interests are, what her experience is, the family that she's come from, just her general overall background.
That is such a good point because, I mean, as we dive into girls, their mentality, it can be a lot like actually being a doctor in the sense of everyone's prescription is different. Everybody has to be approached differently.
Yes, yes.
And that is awesome. And that is awesome that you have found that not only is that true, that's the case, but you're working with girls and you're creating these outcomes. And speaking of the outcomes, I noticed in your program you have 4 learning outcomes. And so you touch on self-awareness and positive self-image, leadership skills, and creative thinking strategies. And there was one that stood out to me that I would love to touch on, which is your outcome is girls will become critical consumers of information related to overall wellness. So like, what's that one about?
Absolutely. So this one is explored a little bit more deeply in the book, if anybody wants to check that out, where it really dives in. But just to give you like an overall understanding, like a great example would be about social media, right? Because unfortunately, and social media and just media in general, girls are depicted in such a way that it's not always what the reality is, right? They're photoshopped, filters are used. And so it's helping a young girl to realize when she sees that picture that it's not all true, it's not all reality, so that she doesn't go and compare herself to something that's really unrealistic, which unfortunately is something that I have done for myself in the past that got me into a lot of trouble. I know I've shared this story before, but you haven't heard it, so let me share it with you if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So when I was in my undergrad career, I thought that I wanted to be a personal trainer for a little while. And so I'm not that far removed from the social media age and technology where I was like, oh my gosh, how is anybody going to take me seriously? Like if I don't look like these personal trainers on Instagram, AKA people who are filtered, maybe who are on some sort of, are using some sort of substance, just really is not something that like my body is necessarily made out to be. And so I had a friend who at the time was a nutritionist, still is, create me a meal plan, which it was all healthy food. So that was great, right? Because I was feeding my body the fuel that it needed to be healthy. However, what happened was I started weighing my food similar to how a bodybuilder would, but I wasn't competing. So in all reality, this was not healthy, and thankfully it didn't turn into an eating disorder. But had I not had the knowledge and had I not had the support that I did to be like, oh my gosh, something's not right about what I'm doing right now, and I'm not happy inside, even though physically I look great, mentally I wasn't in a really great place. And so I think that's why this particular objective is so important, is because I've gone through it on my own, realizing that the impact that the media can have on a young girl, as she's developing and trying to figure out who she is. And I just think that it's really, really important that we have these conversations starting at a very young age with girls about the way that, the media portrays women and how we can fight against that and realize that that's not who we have to be, and that being our authentic self is really, truly what is going to help us, to move forward in life as individuals.
Wow. Yes. I mean, that is just powerful. And you're so right. And I love that you're doing that. So it really is training girls to look at this critically and to understand that what's out there is not reflective of, what you should be, things like that, and trying to deconstruct that and loving yourself as you are, because we're all beautiful, as we are right now.
Oh. Absolutely. And I think this is true, right? It's more than just what we see, but it's what we hear, like in songs. So like if a song comes on the radio and it's talking about degrading women, and your daughter hears it, having that conversation with her to say, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that this is okay? How could this be changed? So really, just engaging these conversations with students and the young women that we live and work with.
Wow. Yeah, totally. And I agree with that. Just consuming all of that and trying to understand how to filter it and better see with a good perspective, and those conversations, and so now, let's diving into the book. I mean, just that message alone, having that in the book is amazing, so the book itself, just the title, it's like, okay, right. It is the conscious empowerment, and it's like, yes, a guide to helping girls build self-esteem and confidence. So let's start with just the idea of this. So was the LLC and the book kind of hand in hand, or how did the idea of the book come about?
Yeah, so they kind of went hand in hand. So as you had mentioned, I'm in grad school. And so why not take on one more thing while I'm in grad school and decide to write a book, right? Like right. Naturally, that would be the only thing that we could do.
Let's add that on there.
I was really fortunate. I had actually a friend go through this program because I'm writing my book in a unique way. It's actually through the Creator Institute. And so they take you through essentially a course that helps to teach you how to write a book. Because the reality was I didn't know how to do this on my own and I needed some assistance, which is why I decided to enroll in this program. And at the time, a fellowship was going on. So I decided to join this fellowship, which started this past, I think it was either late spring or the summer of this year, so 2020. And we started this journey. And I think that I always had some inkling of like, I think this would be me to write a book. But I think what really propelled me was like, hey, this is a really great opportunity. Over the summer, I don't have as many classes as I do. Now I have time to actually begin writing this. Let's just do it because, no time is going to be the great time. And this sounds awesome because it's a fellowship and I'm going to have the support of other authors and editors and, kind of a framework to build this book from. And so, I thought like this would be a really great opportunity to expand Empowered and Poised, to help get the message out more and to connect with even more great individuals that I could interview for the book. So I got really excited about it and here I am.
Yeah, that was so awesome. So I saw the trailer right on Indiegogo for the book, and just like you said, like you're interviewing like these awesome go-getters as well. The CEO of Girls Inc., Stephanie Hull, Dr. Jillian Lambert, Lee Pava, who's the founder of No Means No Worldwide, and then Jillian Lambert is the Chief Strategy Officer for the Emily program, which I actually wasn't aware of this program. So it's a national leader in eating disorder awareness, treatment, and lifetime recovery, and that is awesome, right? Just having those resources. So, so all the interviews and the way that you're structuring your book, because you have different sections of your book and then you have these interviews, was that already laid out for you within this course, or that's from your idea generation?
Yep. So that's from my idea generation. We were able to lay it out however we wanted. So usually like when you start writing a book, it's not going to probably end up the way that you think it is in the end, right? That's what they always tell you. Like where you start is not necessarily where you finish. But what I decided to do was really use this opportunity, like I said, to connect with different individuals. I don't want to say just women because there were also, a couple really amazing men that I interviewed who are key. So like, for example, Lou Bergholz, who is the author of Vital Connections, which talks all about how to connect with young people, which I highly recommend that book, Vital Connections. It really is fabulous. And so mostly though, it was a lot of different women who are experts in this field of working with girls that we interviewed. And what I ended up noticing was that there were some different principles that stood out among many of these interviews. So that's how I decided to pull the 6 principles that are now in this book. Was what are those kind of trending topics, right? When we say trending, it's like the things that we see over and over again. And it also relates to young girls because obviously they're very, intertwined in the world of social media. So kind of a fun play on pop culture. And so those 6 trending topics have become the chapters of the book. So it goes into those. And then from there, we kind of discuss a little bit of how to. So how do you implement this principle in a way that, you can use it with whatever girl you live and work with and make it unique to her and helping her. So really tangible steps on how to apply these principles are what comes after what the main principles are. And I'm happy to share with you, if you're interested, what some of these principles are.
Definitely. Actually, that was my next question. So let's dive in.
Yes. So I'm not going to give you too much, but I will give you a little teaser here.
Sneak peek.
And that is to be that adult, which is basically being the person, the role model that a girl needs in her life, being there, being her champion. Exposure, which is exposing her to different activities, events, and things so that she can learn more about who she is, who she wants to become, and what she enjoys in life. Representation. So this is kind of what we were already talking about, making sure that there's representation in the classrooms, in the media, of girls who are from, different backgrounds, who look different, who speak different, who are just, diverse. We have affirmations, which we spoke a little bit about, and the chapter does a much better job than even I just explained about how to actually use affirmations in a way that science backs and that it actually works. Being seen. So this is the idea that to be seen, it's not about wearing the most glamorous dress. It's about exactly what you said to me here today, is showing up, being who you are, being brave to speak your truth, right?
Mhm.
And then finally, we have a chapter all about sports and fitness, right? Because like I said, with the wellness triangle, it's social, mental, and physical well-being. And there's a lot of science out there that sports, fitness, exercise, physical activity, that those things can also help to improve a young girl and her self-esteem and confidence. So those are the principles that are explained in the book. And hopefully people take the opportunity to check them out. We'd really appreciate your support, in picking up a copy and reading the book and then giving us feedback on what your thoughts are.
Yeah, and that is so cool. Like right now that you have the book on Indiegogo, right? And you say on there that as part of the tiers, when you pledge in, you can give feedback and be part of the author community. So how did you come up with that idea and to create that community there?
Yeah, so actually, I'm grateful to be able to work with a publisher. So New Degree Press has helped along the way in coming up with some of these ideas, because they've had a great number of authors that have come before me to kind of figure out like what works, right? Now, outside of that, community is just super important to me. I think that it is so vital, especially in this COVID-19 world, that we continue to connect with one another to build community, right? And that's the whole premise of Empowered and Poised, is like joining this community. Join us, right? Join the community to help empower and inspire young women. Now, I am very excited, like you said, because people joining the author community, that means that they get the opportunity that if they hop into this pre-sale campaign that we have going here just for this month, that they can help to pick the cover of the book, help give feedback and being beta readers. So some really exciting things to be really a pivotal part of this journey of launching this book, which is, I think, super exciting. And, I'm excited to see what everybody has to say and, which book covers they might like the best and feel like, would speak to the audience the most.
Yeah, that is so exciting. And totally, not gonna lie, I purchased your book because I was like, I love all of this.
Thank you. I
Totally.
appreciate it. And
Oh
I'm
my
excited for your feedback too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. I was just like, I mean, just reading, the intro, your principles that you broke down in the chapters on there, the interviews you had, and then you were also being really transparent about your editing process on there as well. And I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, as a writer, first of all, you're just laying it all out there, which is awesome. It's empowering. And I think it really ties into, this idea of, how as girls, we have these myths that we need to deconstruct, but then also as writers, we have these myths that we need to just kind of break down. So I was like, I'm going to support that as well. But then also your message.
I appreciate it.
Definitely. I'm so excited for where your book is going. And speaking of, I mean, it's such a great and powerful message. At any time, did you feel like when you decided, you're like, okay, let's just like tack on the book as well? Did you feel overwhelmed? What was your mental obstacles when you first started?
Oh yeah, I definitely felt overwhelmed. I still feel a little overwhelmed. If I'm just being honest, yeah, no, I would be lying to say that this was an easy process, right? That's not the truth of it, right? There were definitely times where I hit creative blocks and walls, times where, I wasn't as interested in writing maybe on one day, or the people that I was reaching out to interview, I'd have people who wouldn't get back to me, or, right now as I'm trying to reach this, huge goal for fundraising for the book, and, it's not going maybe as quickly as I hope for it to. But I think at the end of the day, it's everything that we're talking about right now, is you just have to continue to be patient, continue to, do your best, work hard, and know that you have a good message, right? And that's something I needed to remind myself, is like, this is really important work that's happening, and it's not going to be an easy process, because for as cliche as it is, if it was an easy process, everybody would be doing it. So I think through this process, what I want to say is just thank you to all of the other writers out there, to all of the other authors out there, because I definitely, through my own journey of writing a book, have found a new respect for authors and the challenge that it is to really come up with a, kick butt book that it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of research. So I just want to say thank you to everybody else out there who is writing books to inspire people, to educate people, and to also just entertain people, because it's not a super easy process.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that is something that we talk about on the podcast, which is thanking the authors who have inspired us, who have shown up to write. And even when you're staring at the blank page and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing here, and that doubt creeps in, but still showing up and believing in that message. And so you actually just touched on something you said that you had to like remind yourself about that message. Was there anything specific you're doing? Because you talk about affirmations in your book. So I'm curious, are there some principles that you're also using that are mentioned in your book that you use to write your book?
That's a great idea. I think a lot of times we're inspired to write the things that are personal to us, right? And so I think that if I'm just being completely transparent, that for as much as this book is for everybody else, I think it was still a part of like my journey for myself in seeking and helping to myself to understand some of the parts of me that I've still continued to be uncovering. And so I think I just needed to go back and really listen to some of the advice that the different interviewees gave me along the way. And the inspiration that I was feeling every time that I got to talk to such a wonderful individual who was passionate about the same things that I'm passionate about. And, their advice on how to help other girls has in return helped me. So in addition to thanking all of the authors, I think that it would only make sense for me to also thank once again all of the interviewees who helped contribute to this book, because just as you were helping all of these other young women, I want you to know that you've also helped me too. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's a beautiful message. And yes, thank you. Thank you to everyone who contributed to this book and everyone who continues to put out powerful and inspiring messages. And it's exactly as you said. I mean, actually, that is how this podcast was born, which was trying to understand what my own writing process was and trying to show up because, you have maybe this doubt or this struggle. And so we write this, in other words, for ourselves. But, there are people struggling with this as you have encountered, and we're helping them by also showing up. So that was awesome.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So I would love to talk about your interviewing process, because I know some of our listeners, they want to write like memoirs that might take other people into account, or might be doing research, nonfiction. So what was your interview process like? How did you choose, who you were going to ask and go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I think this was one of the most fun parts, I think, for me of the book writing process, was kind of discovering such amazing individuals, some of whom I did not know about before I started writing this book. And it was really through just a lot of research, right? Googling like experts in, experts in girls' confidence, all those kind of keywords, buzzwords that hit the book. And that's when I just started reaching out to people. And it was kind of just like, hey, I've got this project. It seems you have a similar passion to me. I would really love, to take, 30 minutes to an hour to interview you for it, to, hear your expertise on this topic. And I think you would be surprised by how many people are willing to help and said yes. And then from there, it was a snowball effect, right? Because when I would talk to one person at the end, I'd say, and if you have anybody else that you think I should talk to as I'm writing this book, I would really appreciate, if you could connect me. And a lot of them did. And so that's how I started meeting and learning about all of these other really wonderful people, and growing, my network and growing the interviews for the book. So it was really just a super exciting process that was just simply asking. And that was kind of it, right?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, because exactly you said the snowball. Once you kind of start getting that traction, you start kind of be like, okay, I'm rolling. I love that. So I'm wondering, how many interviews did you do you think? I mean, you started this summer, right?
Yeah, so in the end, the book has incorporated roughly, I'd say like 35 or so interviews.
Wow.
So the majority of them did make it into the book. Unfortunately, not every single one did, but I would say, probably a good 90% did. And these also, the other thing too, is we were instructed by NDP, New Degree Press, to really bring in stories. And I'm so grateful that I did that, because I think it makes it that much more enriching. And quite frankly, it's like in this book, you're not going to find these stories anywhere else, because some of them are, from everyday individuals or from the experiences of the leaders of these young women and, the things that they've seen. So it's not something that you could go pick another book up off the shelf and read about, because like we said, stories are unique to who you are. So I'm really excited and really grateful that people were brave enough to share, their stories and allow them to then go public. And so yeah, about 35 individuals in the end were interviewed for this.
Wow, that is fantastic. I mean, especially because it's letting us know that there's so many resources out there.
Oh
And
yeah.
that is amazing, because sometimes you jump into a topic and you're really not sure to where to begin, but you have like consolidated all of that and given us an opportunity to search for and find these new enriching places where we can get that information. And that is awesome.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's where authors can like really tap into the wonderful resources that we have in this virtual world, right? Even though there's a lot of negativity around it, there's also a lot of really amazing things that have come from it. And so it could be as small as like searching up a hashtag and like finding somebody who's kind of in that same genre community as you are. Or, I've recently been trying to connect with some bookstagrammers, which is something kind of new that I just found out about. Are you familiar with that, bookstagram?
Yeah. So Instagram, it's the authors and the books of Bookstagram. So hashtag Bookstagram.
Yes.
Yeah. Or like hashtag writers of Instagram. Yeah. I'm actually pretty new to this as well, but I'm like, once I find it, I'm like, well, here I go. I love it.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's so easy to dive right in. And that's the same thing that I did, right? When I was looking for different individuals to interview, is I just dove right in. And I also should give the credit to, some of my interns as well, who have been a major part of this process in supporting me along the way. So shout out to all my amazing Empowered and Poised interns. I appreciate you all, as I, tell you all on a daily basis, but I'm really so grateful to have a team supporting me through this, because just as I always say with entrepreneurship being a lonely road, I think that writing a book can also sometimes be a lonely road. So really connect with other authors in the community, whether it be, through social media or through your own network, going out and, meeting people on LinkedIn, whatever you have to do, because having people who also understand what it's like to write a book can definitely help to continue to push you forward when things get challenging, in my opinion.
Yes, totally. And I agree with you. And especially, I was just going to take a moment to say thank you for being so transparent as well. Because I think that is something that we strive to do here on the podcast, which is letting people know that every writing process can be different. Every personality is different when it comes to writing. And sometimes we, want to strive to be a certain image of writing, but when we struggle, it's totally normal. It's totally okay. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. You just keep showing up. So thank you again for being transparent on the process, and also that, yeah, writing can feel lonely, but there are like Bookstagram and things like that where you can start connecting. And
Yeah, absolutely.
right. And maybe this is just me, but I love all those beautiful photos of books piled up on Bookstagram. I'm like,
oh my gosh, I love them too.
I'm like,
my photography skills really probably aren't that good, but
mine too. I'm just like, I'll just
they
stare
are
at
lovely.
them. Yeah, seriously. I'm like, if I get just big posters of all these, that'd be fantastic. But I totally get what you mean. So, I mean, the journey can be up and down, but just based on what you're saying, always worth it showing up. So after all your interviews, I'm sure we would love to know. So you've done all this interview process and you're talking with your publisher about maybe the organization. What happened from there? How do you go from interviews to actually writing?
Yeah, so I kind of did it along the way. So as I would, there's actually a really great, and I think your audience would love to know about this. It's called Otter AI, and it's an app. And Otter AI helps to transcribe the different interviews that you're doing, which is really great because even though it's not 100% accurate all the time, you can go back and look up keywords in that interview. And so for me, it was like, I remember, I don't know, like Stephanie Hall saying this really amazing thing about, you know, the importance of making sure that this book, you know, fits all girls, and that we realize that confidence doesn't look the same for everybody. So a girl can be shy and still be confident. So maybe I would look up on Otter AI shy, the word shy, because then it will ping it and you can find that part and re-listen to her, and it even types it out for you. So you can go back. And then what I did is I would kind of listen to these interviews again, or start typing up. I would type notes out too as I would interview. And then that's how I would come up with the stories. So the stories were really based on these individuals, and having this Otter AI technology was super helpful because for me, it was really, really important that I'm not speaking for the women who I interviewed, but that it's really their voices that are coming through and being heard, especially because I interviewed, you know, many different individuals from various backgrounds that weren't similar to mine. So I never want to act like I'm the expert of, you know, a different group that I'm not a part of. So being able to use this technology was really helpful, and then developing the stories. Then once I had the stories is kind of when I would pair them and say like, okay, these are both about sports and fitness. You know, so I'd put them in the same chapter. And then from there, I would go and add in my own experiences, my own suggestions from, you know, the years that I've had working with young women. And then finally, I would take and beef it up with some research to make sure that the information that we're giving is actually, like I said, backed by research. And then that's kind of the way that the chapters were built. And then from there, just figuring out how to piece everything together to make one coherent book. You know, figuring out what are the what's the history that we need to add in the beginning of the book to help set the scene, so that people understand, you know, the difference between self-esteem and confidence, because that's not very well understood. You know, what is this word intersectionality? What does that mean? And then it kind of flows into those principles and how to, and wraps it all together in a nice little book.
Oh, that is so awesome. And I love what you're saying. So as you were researching, you were building. So the book was being built
Yes.
as it was going. I love that.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
I think it would, for me, it would have been very, very overwhelming to not have done it that way, and to have done all of the interviews and research and then have to write it all after. So I really enjoyed doing it along the way, especially because immediately upon listening to the interviewee or speaking with them, that's when I was most inspired, you know, because I just got off the phone and I'm like, this is awesome. People need to hear this. People need to know this, you know, so to be able to write right then. And I would also, if you don't mind me sharing another tip that I have for all of your listeners, and that's to not get too stuck in the way you've always used to do things, but be open to a different process. So what I mean by that is, I thought that I was going to be the type of writer where I would set a block of time aside, you know, like every Monday at 5 o'clock, you know, I'm going to write for, you know, an hour, and then I'm going to write again on Wednesday or whatever, because I like to have checklists of things that I accomplish. That's just the way that I kind of work. I'm a little type A. But what I realized was, in creative writing, that didn't work as well for me. I actually needed to write when I was feeling inspired, as opposed to when I thought I could just get the work done. And I think that that definitely probably helped to make this an even better book, is because that passion was really jumping outside of me as I was writing, you know, the words on the pages.
Yes, yes, totally. That is literally, you know, what we talk about, you know, on the podcast. It's getting to know yourself as a writer, and knowing that it's okay if you need to change and transform and do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Totally, you hit the nail on the head, and especially because, like you said, like if you thought you might be in one way, and I find that I'm one way when I write nonfiction, but I'm different when I write fiction.
Yes, yes. Well, and that's what I found from, you know, like my academic papers that I've been writing, academia, you know, for my grad school, is very different than what I have been writing for this book. Even though there's research in it, it's much more creative. And it was a very different process, and writing up these stories too, which was like, it was kind of a challenge, an exciting challenge though. But it was definitely different for me. So I totally understand what you're saying, that it was different for you, fiction versus nonfiction writing. I totally get that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So for all the listeners out there, just like Leah's talking about, it's okay to, like, if you find that you actually need to go this way, you need to go that way, you need to pivot and change. Totally normal, totally okay. Like, embrace that and jump into it. And like you said, you were enjoying the process. And that's something that we like to hit upon. It's like enjoy the process, because it's fun. It is fun, but you gotta dive
It
into
really is. I really did have fun writing the book. I'm not even gonna lie.
that is
I'm not just saying that. It was exciting.
That's awesome. Was it surprising to you? Like, before that, were you thinking like, oh, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about this?
Yeah, I think honestly, I thought it was going to feel more like work than it did. And I'm not saying, like I said, it was hard work, and it definitely wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't call it easy, but I don't think I realized I would enjoy it as much as I did. I think it was more like, this is a really good idea. I have a message, it needs to get out there. I would love to do more speaking, and I'd love to be able to speak, about the things that I'm sharing in my book. But I don't think I realized how much I would enjoy the process of writing. and so I'm really grateful that I, tried something new, because who knows, maybe there will be another book in the future now that I never would have thought.
I love that. Yes, I love that, because I'm always telling everyone, my listeners knows, I'm like, you write your first book, but you probably have another book in you. So just keep going.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to do something very different. Like, I would maybe like to write for the young women that I work with, or maybe do a children's book. Like, I don't know. I mean, there's so many opportunities and possibilities, like I said, nothing else in the past I really thought I would be doing. So I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say never. And who knows what might come next.
Exactly. No, I love exactly how you've recapped, where you started, your interview process, and then your writing process, which is so beautiful. It really just speaks to the creativity and how much fun you were having. And one thing that you also mentioned, like inside your Indiegogo page for the book, is then next your editing process. So how is that going? Because what are the updates on that, and how did you decide how you were going to approach your editing?
Yes. So as I had mentioned, through this program, we are also given an editing team. And I'm very grateful for that, because that is also a huge process, right? So we originally had our developmental editor, which helped us to kind of just get like our ideas out, find any holes maybe that we would have, make sure that the flow of the book is working nicely. And now I'm in the stage where an acquiring editor is looking through the book. So they're going through and looking for things that are a little bit more detailed. But after they look at it, then everybody who is in my pre-sale, who has, purchased a copy in the pre-sale campaign, they also will have the opportunity, if they so choose, to be beta readers. So before the book actually launches and goes live, they can help to give me feedback. And I'm also going to recruit some individuals who are in my network, who I really trust, who are good editors, excellent readers, things like that, to make sure that it really is in tip-top shape. And then from there, it goes on to another editor. So while I'm no expert in the, editing process and how all of it works through this program, they've really offered support to help us figure out the editing process and how that all works. But I know that is going to be, after this pre-sale, is going to be the next big thing, is really sitting down with the book and taking time to kind of rewrite it. I was recently told that the editing portion is just as hard, if not harder, than the writing portion. So I'm putting on my belt and getting ready for it.
I love that. Yes, totally. And actually that was going to lead me to my next question, which is, so the editing process, it can totally feel like a different beast, and something that we also talk about is like, sometimes if you need help, it's totally cool, right? You have that editor friend that you said, like, you have a circle of people you trust, also the editors that are available to you. That is awesome. And just like you said you're going to put on your seatbelt. And I love that, because sometimes we have to prepare, right? For like, okay, how am I going to do this? So like, what are you doing to prepare then? What's your seatbelt? Are you doing like affirmations, or are you telling yourself, okay, I'm just going to like buckle down and listen and jump into this? How are you preparing for that editing, bracing yourself for the editing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question too. So right now I'm trying to stay a little more present, right? Because right now this pre-sale launch is kind of the main goal right now is to focus on this. And there's a lot that goes into it. I think a lot more than people can ever imagine, a lot more than I thought that there was. You know, sharing with your network, reaching out individually to people, sending texts, DMs, putting it on social media, sending out newsletters. Like it's a big job, right? To just share about the pre-sale launch of the book. So that's where I'm really focused right now, because I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, kind of one step at a time, in order so that I don't get overwhelmed. As far as getting ready for the editing process, I'm kind of a little bit at a standstill at this point because my acquiring editor is still looking through things. So I'm just being patient and waiting until I get that feedback back. And then once I get that feedback is when I'm really planning on diving in, kind of taking that jump, which is why I need my seatbelt on, right? Is to make sure that I could stay grounded during that time so that I can get the work done that needs to be done, because I'm sure that there will be plenty of feedback that I then need to adjust. And also just thinking about like who's in my network that are really good writers that might be interested in this book, that might be interested in helping me, so that I then have a support team along the way, because I'm always of the belief that no matter how good of a writer you are, we still miss things, right? Like we're not perfect people, and no one should expect anybody to be perfect. So the more eyes that can get onto the book before it actually goes, you know, published onto Amazon and into the bookstores and the libraries and all of those types of things, is just thinking about who in my network might be willing to support and, you know, help me edit along the way.
Yeah, yes, that really, I think, is going to resonate really well with the listeners, which is, like you said, so editing is down the road. So right now, focusing on what's going on right now, and for a lot of listeners, it's writing the book or simply doing their research. So I think that's going to be really helpful. So instead of looking at that mountain far away, you're just trekking on this one. That is, yes, totally beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, because, you know, I think otherwise, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everybody, but for me especially, when I first started this process, it seemed really big and daunting. So I think breaking up, you know, writing your book into steps, you know, into small, you know, measurable, achievable goals, so that you can feel and find that progress along the way that can continue to propel you forward. Because I think if you try to do everything all at once, it's much more easy to get stuck, feel defeated, and maybe just not finish at all. So when you can find little achievements along the way, I think that it makes it much more realistic and doable to actually getting to the end goal, which is publishing the book.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's exactly what we tell our listeners. It's like, you know, just a little bit at a time and trekking a little bit at a time. And, you know, actually, this leads me to a question, you know, before we wrap up. It's you said here that you're helping Girls Inc. So the book is helping Girls Inc. Now, how is it doing that exactly?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, a portion of the profits from the pre-sale campaign are going to go to support Girls Inc. And the reason that I decided to partner with Girls Inc. is because I strongly believe in their mission. It's very similar to that of Empowered and Poised, and to everything that's being shared in the book. And considering we had Stephanie Hall interviewed, who is the CEO, as you had mentioned earlier, of Girls Inc., we felt that it only made sense to partner with them and give a portion of the proceeds back to a charity that's doing such good for the community and helping underserved, you know, young women who might not otherwise have the chance to experience some of the things that are mentioned in the book. And it's organizations like Girls Inc. that really give them the opportunity to learn more about themselves, to expand their horizons, and to, you know, be able to grow into confident young women. So we're really excited about this partnership. And we hope that we can, you know, raise more than enough so that we can give back to the community of Girls Inc.
Yeah, that is awesome. And it's such a great mission, such a great organization, because they've done a lot. And I know
Yeah.
some of my listeners, they would love to set up proceeds for an organization or a charity. So, I mean, how, on a technical level, how does that work? Does it do like an automatic type of like split, or so that they can know, like, this is how I want to contribute once my book is published?
Yeah, so actually, if again, just being transparent, the way that it's working with them is once we raise our complete funds, then anything after, you have the opportunity to kind of put that in your pocket or give that to a charity. And so we've decided to give 50% to Girls Inc. once our goal is raised. And then also the other 50% is likely going to go to Empowered and Poised to help with that mission, which is not public, but since it's my organization, I have a feeling that's probably what we'll end up doing so that we could then serve more girls in that way. And that can help to, limit the costs for the to reduce the costs for the girls and pay for some of the art supplies and different things that we need for our programming. So I guess on the back end, a lot of it is reaching out to the organization that you'd be interested in partnering with to make sure that they're open to it, that they're okay with it, that you're following any of the guidelines that they offer to you about engaging with their platforms. Obviously, it's a partnership, so you want to be respectful of that. Now, logistically on the back end, the publisher is helping with all of the finance. Necessarily speak to that in this circumstance, but I know that there definitely are ways that you can do that through websites where you raise donations, or through other fundraising sites as well, similar to Indiegogo, where if you wanted to raise funds to then give back to the community, that you could certainly do it in that way. I don't know, did that answer your question well enough on how people can kind of go about partnering with an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I think because sometimes we will look at an organization and we might feel exactly as we're talking about overwhelmed, like how do I contribute? But you laid it out. It's really straightforward, start the communication. And I love that because I think that a lot of listeners will be like, okay, like that's a step forward that they can take to writing their books, finishing them, and then also donating their proceeds to an organization or a charity, just like you're doing. And also going back into your LLC, which is fantastic because you guys are doing so many great things. That is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think it was also important too that we highlighted this organization in the book. So that's part of the reason why we decided to partner with them, was not only because of the interview from Stephanie, but we also spoke about a young woman who went through the program, and then her confidence was kind of increased because of the opportunities that she was granted, which I believe that that's in the exposure chapter. And then we also had a Girls Inc. alum speak about her experience working with the organization. So there were multiple different individuals within this book who highlighted the importance of Girls Inc. And, I really think when we talk about community, this is a collective effort. How can we all work together to support the same mission? So I think that some people might see like, oh, doesn't your organization like kind of do something very similar to them? Why would you not just, give all the money to your organization if it's basically the same goal? And it's like, well, they're on, a much larger scale than we are now, because we're still kind of in that startup phase. So they have the connections and the opportunity to be able to immediately impact young women. And so, yes, and, right? It's a yes, and. Yes, we can support Empowered and Poised and support somebody else, because at the end of the day, there are so many young women out there that could utilize these services and that need this support. And I can't do that all alone. They can't do that all alone. So let's work together, right?
Yes, totally. And just like we're doing here, right? Showing up and doing the podcast or doing YouTube and sharing each other's message. It's about growing together. We grow exponentially when it's done together. So I think you hit the nail on the head. That is amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All day I'll be like, thank you so much, because I'm so excited for your book. And so y'all, for the listeners who are listening, where can they find you, Empowered and Poised, and also your book? Where can they go to find more information to keep up, and also to donate, to contribute to your goal as well?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for asking that question. So if they want to follow me on my personal pages, it's at ITS Leah, LEAHBBEE. And that's on all social platforms. Feel free to connect in on LinkedIn as well. And then for Empowered and Poised, the handle is Empowered Poised. There's no and in between because it's too long of a handle to be Empowered and Poised. So just at Empowered Poised. Or you can check it out at www.empoweredandpoised.com. And there's information about the book on most of these platforms. So definitely check it out on Indiegogo to be able to support. And thank you everybody who's taking the time to listen to this podcast. hopefully you have some great tips that you can use in developing your own book. And thank you again for your support with Conscious Empowerment and Empowered and Poised.
That is awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Leah. That is Conscious Empowerment, a guide to helping girls build self-esteem and confidence. Everyone who's listening, less than 21 days to reach that first goal. So everyone jump on in there and support this message. Thank you, Leah, for joining us. And I mean, we're wishing you luck, and we're looking forward to seeing the launch of the book.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.